Welcome back to the cryptowrld channel, everyone. My name is Josh, and right now, Bitcoin is on the edge of potentially confirming a massive breakout above significant resistance as the short-term bullish divergence is still perfectly playing out as expected, and this new Bitcoin price chart is potentially revealing the next move for Bitcoin and crypto. So I'll be talking about that in just a moment, alongside Ethereum, which has now officially confirmed the bullish divergence on the daily time frame. So I'll be talking about all of that and more later in the video, so definitely watch to the end. First of all, just before we take a look at the Bitcoin charts today, we need to take a look at the news today, which is of course the so-called Liberation Day in the United States. Of course, this is the day where the massive tariffs basically go into effect. And if you've been following along with the tariff news and how that affects the financial markets, basically that's caused a bit of a correction, obviously, over the last few weeks and over the last month, give or take, in the crypto market and the stock market, basically ever since around January to February, all the way down towards recently around March. And of course, this is because markets are forward looking, so they try to price in advance before the event actually happens. So basically, markets collectively decided that tariffs, at least in the short term, will be bearish. So we saw a sell-off in the markets over the last few weeks in anticipation of this day. But like I explained over the last few days, basically this could potentially be a bit of a buy the rumor, sell the news, except the other way around: sell the rumor, buy the news. So basically sell off before the event, and then once the event actually happens, everyone's already sold, everyone's already priced it in, and potentially we might see some people buying back in. And this is due to the fact that, once again, a lot of people have already priced in, at least in the short-term effect for these tariffs, are already priced into the market. And basically when this day comes and goes, obviously April 2nd, with not much really happening on this day in particular, basically there will likely be a bit of a bounce in the short term because there's that uncertainty that's been lifted in the short term. And so for future reference, in case you're new to all of this, usually when there's apparently a bearish event happening, usually we end up seeing the bearish price action before the event and then a bit of bullish price action following the event, and vice versa. If we have a massive bullish event coming up, usually we see the price pumping beforehand and then we see a sell-off afterwards, kind of like the US election. And so obviously this is one of the many things that is influencing the price of Bitcoin and the stock market, etc. So that's why I'm covering it here on the channel, along with many other things that are influencing the price of these financial markets. And just before taking a look at the technical price charts, taking a look at this price chart right here, which is actually some on-chain analysis. This chart basically looks at the realized profit and loss ratio for Bitcoin. And so of course the black line on this price chart is the price of Bitcoin, and the green line right here basically shows people taking profits. Obviously, if it's in the green at these higher levels right here, that basically means people are securing profits at these higher prices, at the peaks in the price. But when this line actually falls all the way down towards this red area, as we can see, that basically means people are realizing losses. In other words, people are panic selling, and usually that happens near lows in the price of Bitcoin. And so if I'm just hiding my face cam, you can see what's happening behind me, as we can see. So right now, and over the last few weeks, give or take, we have seen multiple occurrences where this realized profit and loss ratio right here has actually dipped below the 1 line down towards the red. And we can see that all of these instances right here over the last few weeks, over the last month, give or take, have basically occurred right around at least some sort of a local low in the price. Now, this doesn't guarantee the bottom forever, but it just means we're likely at some sort of low in the price and we're due to see a bit of a bounce. And we can see that just a couple of days ago, we saw this on-chain signal officially confirm again, basically revealing that this is most likely at least a local low in the price of Bitcoin. And we are due to see a bit more of a bounce, at least in the short term. And so just keep this in mind, at least as of right now, this signal is telling us that once again, we're likely going to see a bit of a bounce. But as I just said earlier, once again, it does not guarantee that we've hit the bottom. Like for example, back here around June, July 2024, we saw this signal confirm. We saw a bounce in the short term, but ultimately we did fall lower a little bit later. But at least in the immediate short term, this is some good news for the price of Bitcoin. And if we're taking a look at this 4-day Bitcoin price chart, technically speaking, the super trend indicator is still currently sitting in the red on this time frame. So nothing's changed over the last 1 day on this chart. And if we're taking a look at the weekly Bitcoin price chart, looking at the weekly Bitcoin MACD, obviously we are declining in the bearish momentum in the histogram within the MACD indicator. And obviously I've already been talking about this for weeks now on the channel over the last couple of weeks, telling you that basically we're at a similar stage in the current market right now compared to what we saw around roughly August 2024, around here, for example, where basically by that point we had already seen most of the bearish momentum that's already played out, that was already behind us, but we didn't necessarily flip massively bullish again straight away. We still took some time before eventually flipping massively bullish again. But once again, by that point right there, we had already seen the worst. The worst was behind us, and that's potentially the situation right now, at least based on the signal that we're seeing in the weekly Bitcoin MACD. And so once again, not much has changed over the last couple of weeks. This is still playing out as I've been talking about for weeks now on the channel. And if we're taking a look at this weekly time frame, of course, right now we still have a massive bearish divergence to pay attention to on this Bitcoin chart, telling us to not necessarily expect a significant amount of bullish momentum towards the upside, like for example what we saw back here, at least anytime soon. But of course we can see some short-term bullish price action, just not necessarily massive momentum on the larger timeframes. And just before taking a look at some other very important Bitcoin price charts today, first, if you want to trade any of these moves in the price of Bitcoin or any other crypto, personally I'm taking a lot of my crypto trades over on BTNX, so I'll make sure to leave a link to BTNX below this video in the description and in the pinned comment. And if you use that link, it'll take you to this page right here where you can claim a massive trading bonus up to 23,000 USDT onto your BTNX account, simply just by trading crypto using that link. So if you're going to be trading crypto anyway, you might as well check this out. Once again, first link below this video. And in case you're wondering, BTNX is a no KYC exchange, which means you can access it from basically any country in the world without needing any KYC. But as always, check your local regulations when it comes to trading crypto. And for whatever reason, if you don't want BTNX as an exchange, there's also 2bit as another option out there, another exchange that I also trade on. So I'll also make sure to leave a link to 2bit below this video as well. And if you use that link, you can also claim some massive trading bonuses over here that are only available using that link. And in case you're wondering, 2bit is also a no KYC exchange as well. But with that being said, taking a look at this daily Bitcoin price chart, and right now we still have horizontal resistance based on this Fibonacci level sitting at close to 88,000. So just keep that in mind. And if we can finally see a confirmed breakout above 88,000, we still have more resistance in between around 91,500 to 92,000 and massive resistance at around 96,000. And if we're taking a look at this 3-day time frame, once again, we have this area of resistance in between 86,000 to 88,000 and massive resistance at 96,000 once again. And as for support, obviously we have some short-term levels of support to watch out for, but the next significant area of support, at least here on the 3-day time frame, is sitting in between around 70,000 to 74,000. And if we're taking a look at this daily Bitcoin price chart, obviously right now, as of recording this video, the price of Bitcoin is getting very close to a possible breakout above this descending line of resistance. But for now, we've not confirmed any breakout as of recording this video, because at least as of right now, this descending line of resistance is sitting at just above 86,000, at close towards around 86,500. So we need to see at least a daily candle close confirming above around 86.5k ideally in order to actually confirm the breakout finally above this massive descending line of resistance, which would be a significant bullish signal here on the daily time frame. But remember, we cannot ignore other points of resistance, like for example 88,000, where the price would likely struggle at, as we are currently doing here in the short term as of recording this video. And if we're zooming further into the short term, taking a look at this 3-hour Bitcoin price chart, technically speaking, and as I've said for days now on the channel, we have a short-term bullish divergence on this 3-hour time frame, telling us we're most likely going to see just a slight bullish relief over the next few days. And obviously, since I said that a couple of days ago, that's exactly what has played out as expected. But considering it's already now played out over the last few days, and considering it's only a bullish divergence on the 3-hour time frame, just the short term, I would not necessarily rely on this bullish divergence for any longer than than what's already happened. And so obviously if you took this trading opportunity by, for example, opening a small long position around here when this bullish divergence first confirmed, or perhaps breaking out above this line of resistance at 83.5k, obviously you've done very well. But right now I'd not necessarily enter into a massive new long position at, let's just say, 87,000, because we have major resistance at that level at close to 88,000 as well. And so ultimately, in order for this short-term bullish relief to actually continue into a further relief beyond 90,000 back towards potentially 96,000, we need to first confirm a breakout above that 88k level. And it's also worth pointing out that in the short term, this 3-hour RSI is getting close to overbought territories. So that's another signal telling us that the bullish divergence is potentially coming to an end. And once again, I'll not rely on this bullish divergence any longer. So it's perfectly played out over the last few days, but I'll not necessarily get overly greedy on this bullish divergence any longer. And as for support to watch out for, if we see a bit more of a retracement here in the short term, in that case, I would expect a lot of support around this level, sitting at roughly 83,500 to 84,000. And below that, we have more support at around 81,500. And below that, more support at 80,000 and also 78.5k. And so those are all of the important levels on the price chart to pay attention to. And that's what I expect in the coming days for the price of Bitcoin. And of course, if we can finally see that breakout above 88,000, then in that situation, we can finally see a continued short-term relief beyond 90,000, most likely at least to 91.5 to 92k. But if we break that level, then I'll be looking at 96k once again. And if we're taking a look at the Bitcoin liquidation heat map, obviously we still have this area of liquidity sitting at close to 89,000, as I talked about in my last couple of videos. And so once again, I said, since much lower prices down here, that this 89k level, this liquidity up here, is acting as a magnet for the price of Bitcoin. It will help pull the price of Bitcoin towards the upside here in the short term. And so far over the last couple of days, that's exactly played out as I've been expecting. But once again, as always, we cannot ignore other points of support and resistance where the price can also struggle at. So while the price has been drawn towards this liquidity at 89,000, before we can actually hit that 89k level, once again, we have strong resistance in this area. But with that being said, taking a look at Ethereum on the weekly time frame, and right now on the larger time frames, Ethereum is still looking very bearish when it comes to the larger price structure. So not much has changed on this chart over the last one day. And if we're taking a look at the 3-day time frame, the same can be said about this chart as well. Honestly, not much has changed over the last one day. So if you want to know more about this chart right here, then check out my last couple of videos here on the channel. So getting straight into the daily Ethereum price chart, and what has changed over the last one day is we've now officially confirmed this new bullish divergence on the daily Ethereum price chart. And so obviously we now have lower lows in the price in the candle closes and higher lows in the daily Ethereum RSI. And of course, as I've explained here on the channel, I'm looking at the candle closes in the price, not the candle wicks, because by default, the RSI goes off candle closes as the input data. And so obviously we cannot just look at the candle wicks for the price and then the candle closes for the RSI. That will be looking at two different data sets. And in that case, there'll be no divergence because we're looking at two different data sets. So we have to look at the same data set based on the candle closes. Once again, that's the default input data for the RSI. And we do indeed have lower lows in the candle closes in the price on the daily Ethereum price chart. And so this means that we're most likely going to see at least a slight bullish relief or potentially a bit of choppy sideways price action as the most common outcomes from a bullish divergence. So basically a break or a relief from all of this bearish price action here. And usually a bullish divergence on the daily time frame plays out over a couple of weeks, give or take, sometimes shorter, sometimes longer. So sometimes only a week, sometimes multiple weeks, 3 or 4 weeks, but usually roughly around 2 weeks or so is what we end up seeing for a bullish divergence playing out on the daily time frame. But as always, a bullish divergence is not necessarily a bullish trend reversal signal. So even if we see a slight relief over the next 1 or 2 weeks or so here on the weekly time frame, that could potentially just look something like that, for example, which obviously doesn't necessarily change the larger trend for Ethereum on this weekly time frame. And so that is what I'm expecting for the longer term and of course the shorter term for the price of ETH. And with that being said, taking a look at Solana on the weekly time frame, and right now Solana is simply still lacking momentum in the short term and running into this significant area of support sitting in between 120 to 130. And so honestly, there's not much else to add here for Solana on top of what I've already said over over the last few days. So if you're new to the channel and you want to know more about what Solana could likely do next, simply check out my last couple of videos here on the channel so that I'm not repeating myself for the subscribers here on the channel that are watching my videos every day. So with that being said, getting straight into the price of XRP on the 3-day time frame. And right now XRP is still playing out this massive bearish divergence, as I've been saying for months, since much higher prices. But if we're zooming into the shorter term, taking a look at the 8-hour time frame, obviously over the last few days we've already started to play out this small bullish divergence here in the 8-hour time frame in the form of a slight bullish relief and also a bit of choppy sideways price action and heading up towards this area of resistance. And as of recording this video, we've just now seen a pretty much perfect rejection from this area of resistance that I've been warning about for days now on the channel, and this is sitting in between around $2.24 to $2.30. And if we're looking at where the price of XRP pretty much rejected from, we rejected from pretty much exactly $2.24, the start of this resistance. And so obviously, at least for now, the price of XRP is still very much respecting these support and resistance levels. And so once again, that's resistance. And as for support, I would expect a lot of support in between $1.95 to $2.05. And technically speaking, this short-term bullish divergence is still active, which means we could continue to play out a little bit of choppy sideways price action, maybe even a little bit more of a relief, come back for another test of this resistance. But remember, even if we have a bullish divergence, we cannot ignore other points of support and resistance where the price would likely struggle at. And so honestly, I'll not be surprised if just in the short term, the price of XRP basically just chops around sideways for a little while, maybe for the next couple of days or so, between this support and this resistance. And with that being said, taking a look at the price of Chainlink on the daily time frame, and it's a similar situation for Chainlink. At least for now, we're kind of lacking momentum in the short term to either direction. We're not looking overly bullish or overly bearish, at least in the short term. We're basically just bouncing around within a sideways price range between support and resistance. And this Fibonacci level of support to watch out for is sitting at roughly around $12.70 to $12.80. So basically in the high $12 range, just below around $13 and close to $13. We have a lot of support around there on the price chart. And as for resistance, we have a lot of resistance in between around $14.90 to $15.50. And basically, if we can finally see a confirmed breakout with candle closes confirming above 1550 and actually holding that as new support, then in that situation, we'd likely see a continued relief up towards around 1750. But if we ultimately fail to break out here and instead we actually ultimately break towards the downside below around 1270 to 1280 with candle closes below that level and actually flipping that into new resistance, then in that case, the next significant level of support towards the downside is sitting at around $10. And while in the short term, short to mid term, the price is basically in a bit of a sideways price range, looking somewhat neutral, technically the larger trend is still currently bearish, at least for now. And once again, I've been saying that since much higher prices months ago. But believe it or not, you can still make profits on all of these moves, whether they're bullish or bearish or chopping around sideways. And once again, if you want to trade these moves in the price of any crypto, check out the links below this video to those exchanges if you want to claim those massive bonuses that are only available using those links. And if you want to actually know how to trade crypto so that you can profit no matter what the price is doing, then make sure to watch these videos popping up right here on your screen. The video in the top left shows you how you can profit from bullish or bearish price action using long positions or short positions, and the video in the bottom left shows you how you can easily profit from choppy sideways price action. But anyway, that is everything that I have to say for today. I really hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you all in the next video.